When I was first inspired to produce a painting about the Vietnam War, I felt that as a Marine Corps Vietnam veteran with a 4-decade-long art career, I was qualified to at least pursue the inspiration. So as the creative strategy for Vietnam Elegy began to unfold, I soon identified certain elements that, when either hand-painted in riveting detail or delicately glued down on the canvas, would become visual anchors that I could continue to build upon. All the components that appear on this narrative on canvas have a significant singular importance. Each individual item has a story of its own to tell. From the beginning, I felt it important that Vietnam Elegy include an image that resembled a black and white photo of a face typical of the kind seen in a Life magazine or others like that back in the 60s. Like a combat photographer's record of what we old fossils might have looked like back then on one of South Vietnam's battlefields. The face of a grunt, ideally, that would epitomize the visible, unspoken combination of innocence and a youthful but streetwise combat maturity. As I searched for the individual to paint, I established 2 requirements that I felt needed to be met. He had to be a Marine, and he had to be a for-real combat veteran. And I ultimately found the man, in spades. This young Marine was the real deal. As point man on his 100th patrol with his Marine unit in Afghanistan, he stepped on a landmine, lost his right leg. He understood combat's realities and the potentially catastrophic sacrifices that came with the job. Yet he has chosen to get on with his life with a passion and a positive outlook. Physically altered, but mentally tough. Enrolled in the university, got a job, got married, just like the veterans of all wars, including those from the Vietnam War. As in all wars, the mission of seeking out, closing with, and destroying the enemy is given to the infantry. In South Vietnam, the Grunts were the ones who did the real stuff of war. They were the nucleus to all operations. They came from all ethnic groups and socio-economic levels, all sizes and shapes, long and tall, short and stubby, bantamweight to beefcake. They humped the hills, slog-fetid rice paddies, became prunes and flooded foxholes, endured sleepless nights. They coped with dysentery, jungle rot, worms and leeches, suffered discomfort, exhaustion, terror and rage, to say nothing of the dangers of lead poisoning from hostile fire. They built sacred relationships and shared holy moments. An almost spiritual sinew bound man and unit together. Perhaps they would not speak of it, but that proximity to death held with it an intimacy with life. And man for man, they did all they could to protect it. These were young men in their prime, employed by society to do its fighting, and were forced to quickly become wise in their ways. A 23-year-old lieutenant would mentor a 20-year-old corporal, who in turn would tutor and protect the 18-year-old private on how to wage an ultra-violent war, hamstrung with hazy objectives that purported questionable policies. So they stood firm to their conviction and commitment to one another, while staggering changes occurred at home as a moral morass encased a self-absorbed society that displayed a cynical, unsupportive sentiment to their honor and obligations, and unthankful responses to their sacrifices. The M60 was the most commonly used light machine gun issued to U.S. forces in South Vietnam, firing a 7.62 millimeter NATO ball tracer or armor-piercing round at up to 650 rounds per minute. In Marine rifle companies, it was common practice to attach the M60 elements of the weapons platoon amongst the rifle platoons, so that each rifle platoon would have increased firepower. The hand-painted image is of a sandbagged M60 machine gun emplacement. To the right of that machine gun position, I painted the end of a belt of 7.62 bullets, insinuating rounds having been fired with empty shell casings ejected into space and tumbling down and off the canvas. Artistically, it provided one of the earlier opportunities to use the airbrush while creating the shadows beneath the shell, helping to lift it off the canvas. This imagery was chosen as the backdrop to the homepage for the website for Vietnam Elegy.